I hear almost no talk whatsoever from Liz Truss or any of the cabinet on Christianity.
Brexit was now out of the way, and I felt that issue kind of gave me some Farageist sympathies, but with the Brexit issue down, I could support the Conservatives fully, as I felt the Brexit under Theresa May wasn't what I desired.
I hear no discussion of things like immigration, and it's not that necessarily being anti-immigration makes you Conservative, but believing in national borders. These are things that are in the scriptures.
Do you think
Britain is in danger of losing Conservative values?
There's an attack on us all the time. I think we had to be very much on, I was going to say on the defence, but I think we ought to go on to the attack against malign forces.
What are these malign forces?
What are they? Almost non-identifiable as such.
What would you say is your most conservative belief?
Pride in our nation.
What makes you proud about this country?
Oh, we have a great history, which we should be proud of. It's one that people that have come to us from all different parts of the world can share, actually, in that history. I reject all this negativism, what people call wokeism.
It's a natural feeling of, this is something I care about. I am naturally a Christian. It's not something you just adopt and say you are. It's nothing. Anyone can be a member of the Conservative Party. Whether they're Conservative or not is a different thing.
People say to me, in an ordinary conversation, they say something about, in private conversation, and then they say, actually, I shouldn't say that. And I say, well, why shouldn't you say that? And they say, yeah, you're probably right, really. Maybe I should be free to say that. And the trouble is, if they say that, then they feel they're going to be under attack by a minority, it is a minority, of people who are going to threaten them. These minorities are insidious. They are prepared to do unacceptable things against the individual.
But overall, the balance sheet is in credit enormously. So I think as a nation we've contributed disproportionately to making this a better world, and we must go on doing that. And I think we are a sort of store of good values and a lot of good people in our country. So I'm very optimistic about the future.
What is a proper Conservative then? Could you define that?
Someone that believes in preserving, conserving and furthering the interests of the core pillars of British society. So whether that's the church, monarchy, our parliamentary system, rather than necessarily the interests of capital or whatever, and which is actually a relatively new thing for a Conservative to be interested in.
How would you define wokeism?
Well, wokeism seems to be a distortion of historical reality that focuses disproportionately on what I would call identity politics, and therefore instead of bringing people together, what it does is separates them, and I object to that.
Can you give an example?
Well, I think it's self-evident.
I've been a Conservative for a long time. I've always seen them as an anti-establishment party.
Do you think the public does not understand about the Conservative Party? Are there any misconceptions?
Well, I think the big one that Labour like to promote, it's the party of the rich and all this sort of stuff. Actually, no, it's not. It's the party that wants to promote success and prosperity. And I do believe that a bigger cake is what we need.
Who specifically do you mean by the establishment?
I guess it's the left liberal establishment which runs the media, which runs the universities, which runs Whitehall.
Most Tories, particularly now, are just normal people going about their everyday business, trying to help better the country.
I'm sorry, I've had an age where I don't really care about saving the planet that much.
I like the fact that Liz Truss was loyal to Boris Johnson. I was a huge Boris Johnson fan.
Would you prefer Boris Johnson to have stayed on as Prime Minister?
Yes.
I'm a Brexiteer, so that was one of the big things. And actually, I think I would prefer Boris Johnson to stay.
What was your favourite? What was the best moment of Boris Johnson's Prime Ministership, do you think?
Getting us out of Europe, getting us out here.
Truss was loyal to Boris Johnson. I was a huge Boris Johnson fan, particularly at the last local election. I think he deserves a huge amount of loyalty for what he achieved. I think she's loyal to him, so she has my support principally because of her loyalty, but also because of her economic package. Fag end of this idea that Tories are all posh people or they don't understand normality, but that's not my experience of the party.
One would say about Truss with Boris and his lies. You know what? Politicians lie, never answer questions anyway. Everybody knows that.
Is it fair to say that a party that's been in government for 12 years isn't the establishment?
Yes, absolutely. They failed to tackle the establishment, and who've captured the institutions, who've captured Whitehall, and they did have a big overthrow of the establishment on Brexit, but they really haven't followed through on that.
What is your most right-wing opinion?
Most right-wing opinion? I think that's a very challenging question to answer, actually. I don't actually know I could answer that one, I'm afraid. I mean, you can probably recognise that some people think things are right wing, other people don't think that's necessarily right wing. I mean, if I was to give you a suggestion, would you interpret supporting the death penalty as right wing? Or, I mean, I think that could be supported by anybody, really.
Is the current Conservative establishment, are they proper Conservatives by your definition?
No.
What makes them not proper Conservatives?
They don't believe in some of the pillars of what conservatism is, and the belief in that each nation has its land and that those borders should be strong and protected. I'm not saying we don't let anyone in, but the current Conservative establishment sees things like immigration as purely an economic tool. They don't see any aspect of a cultural implications whatsoever. It's just not in their consideration, and if it is, they dismiss it out of hand. So it's that sort of thing that I think makes them not really conservative. They are right-wing liberals, I guess you might say. And I mean, to be honest, the current Conservative establishment has done on the social front essentially a slower version of what New Labour did, right? So, whether you agree with gay marriage or not, it was certainly still a step in that same direction as New Labour did with things like the Equality Act. And you're either Conservative or you're not. And the institution of marriage is something that people do care deeply about. And we're now at a point where that's offensive thing to say inside that hall, and it really shouldn't be. And you can disagree or not, but you should at least be able to say it openly and not be challenged. Certainly not be challenged, but certainly not be shut down, shall we say. And I feel most of the people in that hall would shout me down for even suggesting the idea that you might believe that certainly the Christian idea of marriage is between a man and a woman. I actually believe you should split it so you have legal parity for tax reasons. And that's something I absolutely think homosexual couples should have that. I think it's unfair for them to be legally different, but a Christian shouldn't have to call that marriage, because according to our beliefs it isn't, if you see what I'm saying. And that sort of thing should be able to be discussed.